This video is brought to you by friend of the channel SteelSeries, makers of the best keyboard, mice, and headsets on the market. I've partnered with them to make a special unboxing and setup guide for their award-winning Arctis Nova Pro wireless headset. And to celebrate, we're giving away one of those headsets to one lucky winner. Click the link below for details or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers, how are you all liking Final Fantasy XVI? If you're not having fun with it, keep it to yourself. Don't tell anyone, trust me, I know from experience. I kid. It's been an interesting week to see the discourse around Final Fantasy XVI roll through, but what is clear is that many people are loving it, and I think that's what matters most, right? We'll talk more about the reviews for that one later in the episode. For now, welcome back. I hope you've had a fantastic week either playing games or obsessing over the Titanic submersible story. Obviously, there are parts of that story that are tragic, but I think we can all agree that the sub being controlled by a Logitech game controller from like 1995, that part's pretty funny. I mean, look at this thing. It's like the controller you'd make your little brother use until he got old enough and smart enough to understand how to call shotgun or first dibs. That's Videogames, man, always popping up in weird, unexpected places like underwater submersible dramas or The View when Whoopi Goldberg started complaining that Diablo 4 wasn't on Mac. That is a true story, by the way. Let's not forget gaming also makes plenty of appearances in courtrooms. Speaking of which, alright, time to check in on the ongoing legal battle over Microsoft's attempted acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. Wait, don't go. Listen, I know you're overhearing about this, but trust me, this is actually a banger week of headlines when it comes to this stoush. A whole lot of evidence has come to light, a lot of it very juicy. Believe me, you do not want to miss this. Okay, so you know all of the background to this already, but you need to know why all of this stuff is coming to a head this week. The current trial is over the US Federal Trade Commission's request for what's called a preliminary injunction, which blocks the deal temporarily until such time as they've completed their review of it. The problem is that Microsoft and Activision Blizzard King have a deadline of July 18th. If the deal isn't signed by then, both parties need to renegotiate the deal. And while that's possible, insiders and commentators have suggested that would essentially scuttle the deal. Microsoft would go home empty-handed and Activision Blizzard King would be a few $1 billion richer, owing to a few clauses in the contract. So that's the setup. The FTC trying to block it, Microsoft trying to make it happen. Both sides are able to call witnesses, provide testimony, and present evidence collected in discovery, and already that evidence has been pretty damn interesting. Take the acknowledgement from Microsoft that they've not only lost the console war, but they've lost it every year since 2001. Microsoft's submission to the court said, quote, Xbox console has consistently ranked third of three behind PlayStation and Nintendo in sales. In 2021, Xbox had a share of 16%, while Nintendo and PlayStation had shares of redacted and redacted respectively. Likewise, for console revenues and share of consoles currently in use by gamers, install base, Xbox trails with 21%, while PlayStation and Nintendo have shares of redacted and redacted respectively, end quote. It's an argument that Microsoft have trotted out before. Hell, even Phil Spencer put it out there that time he spoke to Kinda Funny. And you can sort of understand why Xbox might be frustrated to be painted as this monopolistic force, when the reality is the best they've ever had is a bronze medal. That wasn't all though. Evidence and testimony gave us a surprising amount of insight into recent and upcoming games. Take The Elder Scrolls 6 for example. Were you hoping against hope that it might be coming along anytime soon? Well, Todd is laughing heartily at you because Phil Spencer revealed that The Elder Scrolls 6 is at least 5 years away, and let's be real, it is more than that. That game was revealed 5 years ago now, and it will likely be upwards of 11 or 12 years between reveal and release. Truly a low point in cynical early bird logo reveals. What about The Outer Worlds 2, currently in development at Obsidian? Phil Spencer was pressed on whether or not that game would become a Microsoft exclusive, and all he could offer was that no determination had yet been made. That's important because the FTC is using every single Microsoft exclusive as proof that Microsoft would tie up the entire Activision Blizzard King catalog as exclusives, despite Phil promising otherwise. Case in point, the Indiana Jones game currently being developed at Bethesda's Machine Games. This is confirmed to be a Microsoft exclusive, but it wasn't always the case. Disney owns the rights to this, and the original contract allowed for both a PS5 and an Xbox version. When the Bethesda sale went through, Microsoft went back and renegotiated that deal, citing the fact that Spider-Man was a PS5 exclusive as an argument for why Indiana Jones should be an Xbox exclusive. Interesting. If this inconsistency is making a head spin, then you're not the only one. Bethesda's head of PR Pete Hines noted it himself in an internal email, seemingly complaining about the fact that Bethesda games were going exclusive while Microsoft was promising that Call of Duty and potentially other properties wouldn't. Pete Hines said in this email, quote, "Did anyone at Xbox think about giving us a heads up on this? Todd's going to DICE in a couple of weeks. You don't think a journo might find him and press him on why the below is okay for COD or any Activision Blizzard games, but not for the Elder Scrolls 6 or Starfield," end quote. That is a damn good question, Pete, but I can't imagine it's going to make the boss too happy. Pete did try to spin it a little when he was invited as a witness by the FTC. He said that Starfield wouldn't be coming out in 9 weeks if it was a multi-platform game, as the chance to focus on one console only had improved development efficiency. That may be true, but it's surely cold comfort to anyone who owns a PS5. For what it's worth, the FTC are using the exclusivity of Starfield as a mighty cudgel to prove that Microsoft plans to make everything exclusive eventually. But how the turntables when Phil Spencer revealed that there were discussions about Starfield being a PS5 exclusive at some point. That shouldn't be too surprising since Sony negotiated exclusive windows for both Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo, so it's only logical to assume that they would have done the same thing for Starfield, and it's also logical to assume that Bethesda would have been up for that because they were also a party to those deals. Phil Spencer says that this is one of the things that forced his hand in that Bethesda acquisition, and yeah, to be honest, that sounds like a pretty reasonable impetus, since losing Starfield after losing Final Fantasy XVI would have been a very rough year for Xbox. And that brings us to the 800-pound elephant in the room, Call of Duty, or Duty as you Americans call it. So much of the back and forth about this merger has hinged on this fucking game, but believe it or not, the question of COD exclusivity predates this proposed merger. At one point, Bobby Kotick said to Microsoft that unless Activision got better revenue share, they'd make COD a PlayStation exclusive. Can you believe that? This entire time we've been talking about whether or not COD would become an Xbox exclusive, when all along the real threat was it becoming a PlayStation exclusive thanks to Kotick's fuckery. Unbelievable. Again, Phil Spencer used this threat as a justification for why Microsoft had to move forward with this acquisition attempt. They just couldn't risk being frozen out on COD. It gets even wilder than this though. You know how Sony's Jim Ryan has been out there banging on every table, talking to all and sundry about how Microsoft would make COD an Xbox exclusive. Turns out he never even believed that. In an email dated January 22nd, Ryan wrote, quote, "It's not an Xbox exclusive play at all. They're thinking bigger than that, and they have the cash to make moves like this. I've spent a fair bit of time with both Phil and Bobby the past day. I'm sure we will continue to see Call of Duty on PlayStation for many years to come," end quote. Oh my god, are you kidding me right now, Jim? Come on, man. If you are going to try and hustle us like this, then at least don't document your truth like some villain whose diary gets discovered at the beginning of the third act. This is amateur hour, Jim. You were just giving easy layups to Phil Spencer right now. Obviously, that's an admission that Microsoft's lawyers were all too happy to hammer, and Phil Spencer was happy to help when he took the stand and promised under oath that Call of Duty would remain on PlayStation. Quote, "I would raise my hand. I would do whatever it takes. We have no plan. I'm making a commitment standing here that we will not pull Call of Duty. It is my testimony from PlayStation," end quote. Well, there you have it. No one's ever lied under oath, so I guess case closed. Not quite, obviously, but it does show how far Phil is willing to go to get this deal over the line. Plenty of other interesting tidbits to shake out of these proceedings. For example, did you know that Xbox considered acquiring Bungie? Imagine that, hey! Microsoft owning Bungie. Sounds pretty crazy, doesn't it? Oh well, I guess it never happened. I guess it will never happen. Microsoft also considered picking up Sega since they have a boatload of juicy IP to pull from, and it gives them a nice foothold in Japan. But the reality is Microsoft has essentially considered buying every studio or publisher at this point, so ravenous is their hunger for talent and IP. Also very interesting to note that Phil Spencer expects the next console generation to begin sometime around 2028, which means we're only like 4 years away from next-gen console reveals. These proceedings may have material impacts on how that next gen plays out, as Microsoft revealed that Sony did not provide them with PS5 dev kits early on, which is why there's no PS5 version of Minecraft. Similarly, Jim Ryan has flagged that if this acquisition goes through, they'd be unable to provide PS6 dev kits to Activision Blizzard, meaning that we shouldn't expect PS6 versions of games like Call of Duty or Overwatch 3. now with 3-person squads, and every skin costs $600. Of course, Sony choosing not to provide dev kits to the competition is their prerogative, but it's also understandable since you don't want to be giving away your hardware secrets to the very people you're in business against. But it's the perfect example of just how far the repercussions of this deal could reverberate across IP, across platforms, and across console generations. And that is the update. I know it was long, but was I lying? That was some good shit, right? Way more interesting than your average acquisition update. I can't promise they'll all be that juicy, but I can promise that I'll keep you up to date because, like it or not, this is still the biggest gaming news story of the year. But it's not the only news story. Take, for example, the latest Nintendo Direct. Did you guys catch that one? It wasn't a barn burner by any means, but it did have some pretty great stuff in there worth paying attention to. We got some information about the upcoming Pokemon DLC. It's more Pokemon. Don't know what else to say about that one. The Batman Arkham trilogy is coming to Switch, and that's pretty rad. We got a deep dive look at Pikmin 4, which continues to look excellent, and it's wonderful that series is making a return. The Metal Gear Solid Collection Volume 1 is making its way to Switch on October 24th. I thought we all kind of knew this already, but maybe this was the announcement for the Switch port. Either way, that is a big win. Vampire Survivors is getting a couch co-op mode on the 17th of August, which is the same day it arrives on Nintendo Switch. Lord help any of you who have not yet had your life utterly ruined by this game. You are in for a rude shock when you look up and notice it's 4 AM, and when you close your eyes to go to sleep, you can still see the game map and all the flashing lights popping off. Trust me, that's happened to me way too many times. Those were just the warm-up rounds though. The headline offerings included Move It Wario Style, a new Wario game that utilizes the Joy-Cons to get you off the couch and moving around. Not sure if gamers will be up for that, but we'll find out, I guess. Super Mario RPG sent mini Nintendrones into overdrive when it was revealed. This is a remake of the 1996 Super Nintendo classic that takes the beloved heroes and villains of the Mushroom Kingdom and turns them into a fellowship battling it out in JRPG style combat. This one arrives on November 17th and it looks great. The biggest reveal though was a brand new 2D Mario game titled Super Mario Bros. Wonder, the central conceit being Mario's ability to pick up wonder flowers that will transform both the world and Mario into fantastical things. I can't remember when the last 2D Mario was, but it feels like a little while now, so it's great to see Nintendo back at it, no doubt emboldened by the incredible success of the Mario movie, which is actually already like one of the most profitable animated films of all time. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is out pretty soon actually, on October 20th. Finally, there's a Princess Peach game on the way as well. No specifics on this one yet, but we did see a snippet of gameplay and it's out sometime this year. And there you have it, the Nintendo Direct. Told you it wasn't all Xbox and Sony news this week. A quick lightning round to finish off. Diablo 4 suffered a massive DDoS attack earlier this week that brought the game down for hours. It's certainly not the first DDoS attack that Blizzard has suffered, but it is the first since the launch of Diablo 4, and it's prompted some people to demand that Blizzard add an offline mode to the game. Allow me to be the first to say, good luck with that. Never gonna happen. It would be nice, but it's never gonna happen. Metal Gear Solid 4 may soon be free from the George Foreman grill, aka the PS3. A data mine leak this week revealed what everyone was kind of expecting when Konami named the upcoming Metal Gear Collection Volume 1. Breadcrumbs pointing to a Volume 2 hint at the inclusion of Peace Walker, Metal Gear Solid 5, and the motherlode, Metal Gear Solid 4, baby, a game with spaghetti code so nefarious that most emulators shudder at the mere sight of it. It would be fantastic to get this game properly re-released on modern hardware, but it is Konami we're talking about here, so let's not count our chickens before they hatch. I know we've already done a boatload of Xbox news, but here's one headline they squeezed out hoping no one would notice. The price of the Xbox Series X and Game Pass are both going up in the majority of territories. The price of Microsoft's fridge-shaped console will increase to £480 sterling, 550 euros, 650 Canadian dollars, and $800 dues. In the US, Japan, Chile, Brazil, and Colombia, the price will remain the same. The price of Game Pass will increase in all territories by roughly $1 a month. Hardly a deal breaker, but it may be just a reminder that people need to cancel a subscription if they're not getting much value out of it. Wolong Fallen Dynasty is getting some Lies of P crossover content, or maybe Lies of P is getting some Wolong content, or maybe both, I don't know. The news came from Team Ninja's website. It's a very odd crossover because while these two games are both Souls-like, they don't have much else in common, and they aren't being published by the same label or anything. Still, it's pretty cool, and it'll be interesting to see what shakes out of this one. And finally, Guerrilla Games have added a touching tribute to the late and very great Lance Reddick in Horizon Forbidden West. Reddick was best known as an incredible on-screen talent in shows like The Wire or movies like John Wick, but he was also prolific in the gaming space, appearing as both Commander Zavala in Destiny and Silas in Guerrilla's Horizon games. The tribute has his name floating in a quiet, idyllic location, well off the beaten path, but well worth seeking out if you're looking to pay your respects to an iconic talent taken too soon. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, in addition to that Nintendo Direct, there were a few announcements. Turbo Overkill made its early access debut last year, its most notable feature being the fact that your character has a chainsaw for a leg. Luckily, it wasn't all gimmicks, as Turbo Overkill would go on to impress pretty much anyone that got their hands on it. A boomer shooter style experience that looks to advance that subgenre rather than just relive the glory days. The developers have just announced that the game will be hitting 1.0 on July 18th, and once the PC build is done, they'll be turning their attention to console ports. This one is sitting at 96% overwhelmingly positive on Steam, and it isn't even finished yet, so it is definitely one to have on your radar. There's a new Transformers game on the way in the form of Transformers Earthspark Expedition. It's a third-person action game with a mix of car combat and old-fashioned fisticuffs. It looks a little basic, definitely not a AAA offering here, but hopefully it's got it where it counts. This one is hitting all platforms on October 13th. Gloomhaven is a digital adaptation of the beloved tabletop RPG. It was in early access on PC for a while before hitting 1.0 last year. Console ports have been in the works since then and are now nearly done, confirmed to be hitting on September 18th. Hey, here's a weird one. Remember Chocobo GP? If you don't, it's because it was one of the 6 or 7 live service flops that Square Enix farted out last year before quickly shuttering each of them. This was a kart racer that should have engendered a lot of love given its cast of characters and setting, but the whole thing was just a crude microtransaction hellscape, and with nothing but hostile word of mouth out there, the title was quickly delisted from sale. Well, it's back actually. Almost without any announcement or fanfare, Square have relisted this on the Nintendo Switch eShop, but they've done so without any microtransactions in it. It's just a straight up video game now that you can play and unlock stuff by playing. It's a revolutionary concept, I know, but it's nice to see publishers thinking outside the box. That's available right now on the eShop, so you can grab that if you can. And finally, only one delay announcement this week, and it's for Immortals of Aveum. This was meant to ship in July, but out of a desire to further polish the title, it'll now ship on August 22nd, 3 days before Armored Core. That must have been a very rough call for this team to make, because that previous July release window was one of the best things going for the title. There's not much hitting at that time, except for Remnant 2 and Pikmin 4, both great looking titles, but certainly a lot less in demand than the next thing from FromSoft. So my point is, gotta respect the team for putting quality before a convenient release date. This is, after all, EA, who shipped 2 fantastic titles, both greatly undermined by the quality of their PC ports, Wild Hearts and Jedi Survivor. So if this delay helps Avium sidestep that grim fate, then that's only a good thing. By the way, I actually did play Avium while I was at the Summer Games Fest, so if you want to see what that one's all about, I'll leave a link to my preview below the like button. So what came out last week? Quite a stacked week actually, with a mix of indies, AA and AAA behemoths. We'll do the smaller stuff first. Mars First Logistics is a lovely looking physics and construction game where you build odd looking rovers to move about oddly shaped things. This one had plenty of demos and previews in the lead up to its early access launch, all of them very positive, and the early access release is no different, with the title already sitting at 98% very positive. It would be overwhelmingly positive, but there just aren't quite enough reviews up yet. If you want to help change that, you can grab the title right now on Steam, but do be aware that it is early access, so expect a few bumps and some content gaps. The other indie to release this week was Trepang Squared, and boy howdy did this one deliver just like I knew it would. This one is a spiritual successor to the Fear games in many ways, particularly in the overall flow of combat and the intelligence of the AI hunting you. This had one of the best demos I've ever played when it was on the Steam Next Fest some time ago, and the final product appears to be even better, 95% overwhelmingly positive on Steam, though critics are a lot more muted on it, sitting at a strong 78. Gaming Bolt scored this one an 8 out of 10, saying, quote, "It features fantastic gunplay and some excellent enemy AI to play around with, and despite the visual clutter, you'll likely find yourself having a good time," end quote. And IGN Italy were in broad agreement, saying, quote, "While not without its flaws, some more glaring than others, Trepang Squared still offers some of the most intense and visceral combat you can find in an FPS, and that is more than enough to make for a solid experience," end quote. It's out right now on PC, and you gotta guess that console ports are on the way at some point. Sea Smash is a reimagining of an old Sega game resurrected through the magic of VR, or more specifically, the PSVR 2. This is exclusive to Sony's headset for the moment, and it's meant to be pretty good. God is a Geek scored this one an 8, saying, quote, "Sea Smash VRS is like a culmination of an idea 20-odd years in gestation, with a great multiplayer offering only stumbling in its single player," end quote. That's a good call out though, as this one is pretty multiplayer focused, and given the niche nature of titles like this, you shouldn't expect that matchmaking side of things to be popping off for very long. Definitely one to pick up if you have a friend to play with, so you've got someone to play against. Probably Probably don't recommend grabbing this one if you're looking for a single player experience though, as there really isn't much there. All right, next up is Crash Team Rumble. That's right, bet you forgot about that one, like everybody else. This one didn't look super great in the lead up to it, and the critics seem to agree. It's sitting at a very nice 69 on OpenCritic. At the top end of the spectrum is Game Informer, who scored it an 8, saying, quote, Crash Team Rumble's take on multiplayer platforming madness is unique, with enough depth to keep you on your toes after hours of gameplay. Those searching for a fresh take on the long-running series should give it a try, end quote. At the other end of the spectrum is Metro Game Central, who scored it a 4 out of 10, saying, quote, turning Crash Bandicoot into a MOBA is certainly a choice, but not one that's paid off in this paper-thin platformer that has little to offer either franchise fans or newcomers, end quote. I actually thought this one was free to play, by the way, and I was like, okay, well, yeah, sure, whatever. It kind of looks like it should be, so fine. Turns out this is a paid product with additional microtransactions. I mean, Jesus Christ, pick one. If you're going to make a competitive multiplayer game, it should probably be free to play these days, and if you're not and you're going to charge for it, then you shouldn't be charging additional money for skins or hats or whatever. Look, I'm going to call this right now. I would be stunned if the servers are still up for this by the end of the year. Prove me wrong, Activision. Prove me wrong. All right, getting to the business end of things now. Aliens Dark Descent launched on all platforms bar the Switch last week, and it had a pretty rosy reception, actually. 88% very positive on Steam, lots of positive buzz across social media, and a respectable, strong 77 on OpenCritic. PC Gamer were very complimentary, scoring this one an 84 and saying, quote, a powerful generator of gnawing tension and tough tactical decisions, Aliens Dark Descent is a script pass away from being an all-timer, end quote. But there were also plenty of 7s in there, like IGN's, who wrote of it, quote, Aliens Dark Descent is a fascinating, tense-inspired survival horror RTS with a few too many technical bugs to recommend it without caveats, end quote. Bottom line, the developers seem to have pulled it off. If you're in the mood for a real-time tactical experience with a healthy dose of tension and terror, it looks like you could do far worse than this. And finally, Final Fantasy XVI. Okay, so where to start with this one? All right, let's just say it's been a bit of a week for old Shillup. Despite me begging and pleading at the start of my review for people to not care about what I think, it turns out a bunch of people were very, very angry about what I thought. If you watch my review, you would have seen that I personally am not a fan of Final Fantasy XVI. I think it is too leveraged into its cutscenes. I think its mission and world design are pretty dated. I think its RPG systems are essentially non-existent because, well, they are non-existent. I think these are pretty milquetoast criticisms, by the way, but yeah, Reddit and Twitter were, it was open season on Shillup this weekend. That's fine though, I've been here many times before and likely will be again, but the point I will always come back to is that reviews are just opinions. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks about the thing that you love, because what matters is that you love it. And people do love this game. All over social media, you see gushing praise for it. Clear evidence that Yoshi P and his crew made a good bet when they made the move to a full character action combat game, as well as a more mature Game of Thrones inspired storyline. Critics really, really love this one, with it sitting at a mighty 89 on OpenCritic. GameSpot scored this one a 9, saying, quote, Final Fantasy XVI is a bold shift in both gameplay and narrative, yet captures the Final Fantasy magic in stunning fashion, earning a place within the pantheon of incredible entries in the beloved franchise, end quote. And IGN concurred, also scoring it a 9, saying, quote, its excellent story, characters, and world building are right up there with the best the series has to offer, and the innovative active time lore feature should set a new standard for how lengthy, story-heavy games keep players invested in its world, end quote. Having said that, there were the smattering of critic reviews that were more critical, like the 6 out of 10 from Metro Game Central, who said of it, quote, an excellent battle system shackled to a dispiritingly dull and long-winded fantasy adventure that takes an inordinate amount of time to say nothing of value, end quote. So yeah, Final Fantasy XVI, I'm going to be really interested to see how the narrative shifts on this one over time. Final Fantasy 15, for example, got really high reviews, and then later on, everyone was like, wait a minute, this fucking sucks. But then, years after that, everyone kind of has a bit of a soft spot for it now because they really love the bros and the road trip and the journey and all that sort of stuff. The way we see these big marquee releases often shifts over time, and there's every chance the same thing will happen here with Final Fantasy XVI. For now though, it's out, it's exclusive to PS5, it's on the way to PC at some point in the future. Xbox port, question mark? Not unless Microsoft buys Square Enix, I'd wager, and I think Phil's a little bit busy with another acquisition at the moment. so I wouldn't hold your breath. All right, so what's coming out this week? Not a lot. Boy, this is a skint week if I ever saw one. There's a wrestling game coming out, AEW Forever. I'm gonna keep it real with you. Wrestling is a weird American art form, and I view it much the same way that you people must view cricket, with puzzlement and suspicion. Still, I do know that AEW is the new kid on the block when it comes to the wrestling scene, so if you're keen to support the underdog, then this one hits all platforms on the 29th. Here's one that I'm actually pretty keen on. Power Wash Simulator is getting a SpongeBob SquarePants themed DLC this week, launching on the 29th for all platforms. It's Power Bob Sponge Wash. Clean, iconic underwater SpongeBob locations using the power of water, I guess. This unironically looks awesome, and it's not the first crossover rodeo for Power Wash, having already released a Lara Croft themed content drop and a Final Fantasy VII themed update as well. Those were free because they were Square Enix IPs, and Power Wash is published by Square Enix. Bet you didn't know that. Since SpongeBob is not a Square Enix property, you will have to fork out a couple of bucks for this one, but if the previous updates are anything to go by, it'll be money well spent. Okay, so have you heard the legend of Everybody 1-2 Switch? This is a game made by Nintendo that apparently playtested so badly, people hated it so much, that Nintendo had to significantly delay it to fix it. Apparently that process is now concluded and the game will launch exclusively on the Switch on the 30th. It's essentially a party game with a ton of mini-games involving sprinting or hurling ninja stars or games like musical chairs, and the thing is, you can actually have up to 100 people playing locally because people can play the game using their smartphones as a controller. That's kind of cool, actually, and I can see this having use cases in, Christian band camps or whatever. But, let's be real here, we're gamers. We don't have any real-life friends. We could barely fill a phone booth with our mates, let alone a scout hall. And this game doesn't appear to have any online co-op. Still, if you are one of the rare Nintendo fans that also happens to have healthy in-person relationships with other human beings, then this one arrives on the 30th. That's not the only Nintendo Switch exclusive dropping that day though. Samba de Amigo is back. This one's called Party Central. Sadly, no maracas this time around, just the Joy-Cons doing the job, but let's be real, definitely way less satisfying to use. Final release of the week is a pretty cool one actually. Many years ago, the man behind the Ace Attorney games made a clever, macabre puzzle game called Ghost Trick. You play a dead guy who can possess objects and manipulate them to alter the fate of others, while also trying to solve the mystery of your own death. It was only ever released on the 3DS and found limited commercial success, but it became a bit of a cult classic, and now Capcom have remade it in the RE engine and are shipping it to all platforms on the 30th. I actually have this installed on my Steam Deck right now as Capcom sent me a review copy. I'm only a small ways into it, but right off the jump, it makes such a fantastic impression, and I'm very keen for more of it. Definitely something I plan to chip away at whenever I find some spare time. Okay, so I promise I selected this next game well in advance of the recent Titanic-themed submersible drama, so with that disclaimer out of the way, put this on your radar. While I was at the Summer Games Fest in LA, I got the chance to go hands-on with this. It's called Under the Waves, and it's a debut title from a French-based studio called Parallel. It's not at all Subnautica. It's not a survival game. It doesn't have building or resource management. It's instead a narrative-led psychological exploration game, exploring not only the deeps, but also the concept of grief, as the main protagonist has recently suffered a traumatic loss and needs to come to terms with it. In addition to the impressive presentation and premise, the thing that really grabbed me was the writing. There's this beautiful melancholic quality to the script, and the English voice cast had perfectly captured the sullen, sinking sadness that must accompany a life lived alone in a small metal box hundreds of meters below the surface. I'm really keen for this one, and I definitely think it has sleeper hit potential. It's one I will absolutely be playing through when it launches on August 29th. If you're at all interested and want to check it out for yourself, maybe even wishlist it, I've profiled it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and we are in the final week of the month, so it's time to scoop up your PS Plus goodies, your Games with Gold, and your Twitch Prime gaming offerings before they disappear. Meanwhile, Epic is still doing their regular weekly thing, not much to write home about this week though. Right now you can still grab some in-game items for Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, Dungeons and Dragons, as well as the Hunter, Call of the Wild. Later this week, those two will be replaced by something called the Dungeon of Nahulbuke, the Amulet of Chaos. I haven't heard of this one, but it's apparently a tactical dungeon crawler released back in 2020, mostly positive on Steam. Nothing else to really say about that one. Game Pass got a refresh this week, and it's got a few interesting things on there. Arcade Paradise is a weird but wonderful game about setting up an arcade in an old laundromat that you work a part-time job in. A nice concept for 80s kids, I think. Fist may look goofy with the whole one-punch rabbit vibe, but it's meant to be pretty decent actually. Very solid reviews for this one when it came out. Same goes for Bramble the Mountain King, a dark adventure game based on grim Nordic fables. Rave reviews for that one when it launched earlier this year. Finally, if it's something a little more AAA you're after, then perhaps you might enjoy Need for Speed Unbound. This one had really solid reviews at first, but then public sentiment seemed to kind of turn on it, and now it isn't spoken about nearly as fondly as some of the other recent Need for Speed games. Still, that Game Pass price tag is hard to argue with, so if you're at all curious, you can suck it and see. That is a phrase that means you can try it for yourself, by the way, but when I say it like that, it sounds like it means something quite different. Anyway, let's move on. The final sort of free shout this week is for Prime Gaming, who are getting all warmed up for Amazon Prime Day coming up soon. God, there's something really gross about corporations declaring days, like proxy religious holidays intended to elicit donations to Jeff Bezos' coffers. Anyway, Jeff is a merciful god, and he's giving away some extra video games this month, most notably the extraordinary Prey, a masterpiece of an immersive sim, and sadly also Arcane Swan Song, it seems. That's available right now, but over the next few weeks, additional stuff will hit the giveaway bin, including Star Wars Force Unleashed, Neverwinter Nights, and Baldur's Gate 2. And if you get started on that one right about now, you might have it finished just in time for the release of Baldur's Gate 3 at the end of August. Okay, feel-good story for the week time, and I gotta admit, every time these guys roll out a new trailer, I'm like that dog from Pixar's Up. Squirrel! With a gun. This is a new trailer that just dropped. I would remind you that this is an actual video game that actual human beings, or squirrels, are making. The thing is, Steam is full of this type of gimmicky garbage, but the difference is that this one actually looks pretty good, and the developers have taken the time to record a Snake Eater-inspired theme song for it. Did you notice that a second ago? If not, take another listen. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the show for the week. Lazy Austin is back from his vacation now. He edited half this video and Stu helped out with the other half, so thank you to both of those gents. Again, if you liked it, then please hit the thumbs up on the video. I'm sure both Stu and Austin would appreciate that, as would I. Also, if you'd like to come back next week, we'd love to have you, so be sure to subscribe and ding the notification bell. I've got a preview going up later this week, one that I'm pretty pumped for, but I'm going to be winding down soon as I'm about to take a family vacation for like 3 weeks. We'll still have videos going up on the channel through that time though, but we'll talk more about that later. For now, I hope you're enjoying whatever it is you're playing, and before you head off, maybe consider sticking around for this week's sponsor, SteelSeries, since I partner with them to make a very special thing, and you might like it. Roll it, Austin. Guys, if you've been around the channel for a while now, you'd know my good friends SteelSeries. They've been supporting what we do around here, and I've always been proud to have them as a partner because they consistently put out the best stuff in each of their chosen categories. Mice, keyboards, headsets, and more. All of it industry leading and award winning, and if you don't believe me, just go check out the reviews. Recently, SteelSeries and I did something pretty cool. We worked together to make a setup and unboxing video for their award winning Arctis Nova Pro wireless headset. That's now up on their official SteelSeries YouTube channel. Now, when people grab one of these bad boys and want to watch a setup video, they'll have to see my ugly mug. Sorry about that. Still, they should take solace in the knowledge that they've got themselves a damn fine feature-packed headset. The Arctis Nova Pro Series headset comes in PlayStation, Xbox, or PC variants, but they also support multi-system connect, allowing you to connect a PC and multiple consoles at the same time, so you can just switch between them. That's done through this sexy-looking dedicated audio controller, which not only handles that, but also lets you control volume, chat mix levels, switch audio modes, tweak EQ, and much more. It comes in both wired and wireless variants, and if you're using the wireless version, you can hot swap batteries since the headset comes with 2 batteries that support up to 22 hours of playback each. I've got the wireless version. You know why? Because that version has active noise cancelling, something that almost no other gaming headset on the market has. Putting them on and hearing that sound of silence is just so good every single time. There are other bells and whistles on the SteelSeries Arctis Nova Pro wireless headset, so if you want to get the full rundown, I encourage you to check out the video I put together with SteelSeries. You'll find a link to that below, and if you want to win yourself one of those, then head over to Twitter to be in the running. I'll leave a link to that giveaway below as well. And finally, if you want to grab one of these headsets or anything else from the SteelSeries store, don't forget you can get a 12% discount when you use offer code SKILLUP at checkout over at SteelSeries.com. Thanks SteelSeries for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.